Hi, this is Adam Swiderski with CBR. We're here at New York Comic Con 2022 talking to the cast and creators of Significant Other, Paramount Plus, new horror, romantic, drama, comedy film.
Yeah, sci-fi thriller, romantic drama, comedy, psychological thriller. It's all wrapped up, yeah.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to touch on first. I feel like this movie has so much to say about so many things: relationships, romance, love of other people, love of self. What was the inspiration for kind of wrapping all that up in a sci-fi thriller package?
Sure, yeah. I think, we wrote this in the middle of the lockdown in 2020 when we didn't know when we would ever get back to set again. And so our first thing was just like, okay, how do we make a movie that you can make in COVID? And so we're like, all right, it'll be outdoors with two actors. And then from there, you kind of knew that you wanted them to be in a relationship because there was going to be more, drama that you could mine from there. And then just from there, I think it became a story about two people who have different ideas about what the next step in their relationship should be, which is something that I think a lot of people can kind of relate to. And a lot of times, if you're the person in a relationship who doesn't want to get married, it's looked at as a bad thing, or your whole life you kind of get pressure to take that leap, whether you want to or not. And so I think that's kind of where Ruth finds herself in this film, and I think Harry sort of represents this buttoned up white picket fence and two kids kind of future that she's not sure she wants to sign up for just yet. And the movie is kind of about the inescapability of that eventuality, if that makes sense.
So much of it, small cast, as you said, rides on this relationship. What was it like for the two of you to develop that relationship and find how these characters work together?
Like the slowest draw on that whole street.
I'll do it.
Very deep sigh, and it's torture.
Just a longing look. Just take this one. Well, like you always hope to have rehearsals, I think, and those are, you hope for a long time, and then hopefully you get any time, And we had a handful of days together, the four of us, to pour through the script and kind of go through and try to relate something, at least for me, of my own experience into what Harry's hoping for or wants, or what their history is, how they came to this place to be together, and then go home and try to build something meaningful and organic internally out of that. Because as crazy as this story gets, as crazy as the movie gets, if it doesn't start from a place where you think like, oh, these two people love each other and maybe they're on different pages, but there is love here, it doesn't really matter how nuts the second act is if you don't believe the first one. So I felt like I at least had a lot of attention to wanting that to feel grounded and loving and legitimate, so that then when everything gets yanked, you're along for the ride.
How much of that was collaborative versus what was on the page? Were there things that developed on set, or
Sure.
that surprised you, two of you?
It was very collaborative. We go in with a script, but especially like you said, with something like this that's so performance driven, it's incredibly important that they feel like there's authenticity with the words that they're speaking and the actions that their characters are taking. And we're really lucky because on top of being incredibly talented actors, Maika and Jake both have a really sharp story sense, and so they made tons of contributions in the weeks leading up to production with tiny little
contributions. That's a really generous. I mean, you could also be like, they just had a bunch of stuff, and we
No. It was.
found a way to get it in there.
I wouldn't be honest in this setting, but at some point I would have been honest with you if it was annoying and shitty. But it was really good, and it when you find something like that an actor who's embodying a character you wrote really brings something that elevates it, even if it's like the tiniest thing, a little tick, or so many lines like we worked on, where it's just like crunching down a three-word line into one word, or like maybe we don't need that line, maybe it's just a look, and those are some of our favorite moments in the movie now. We're really not precious about the superficial lines as long as what's happening underneath the hood is the same, and they're just so good, both of them, at bringing that.
Was the surfing thing totally a coincidence when it came to casting Maika?
No, it was written.
Yeah, you joke, but it was.
No, it was actually quite cute reading reading it, and I am vegetarian. The character's vegetarian, and the character serves. So I was like, I don't think I've ever had that happen before. Read a script. Yeah, it was quite cool.
Like I said too, we wrote this at a time when we were just wanting to get out there and make another movie. And one of the things that we had such a great time working on villains with Maika. And so we wrote the role for her. Originally we were just going to be like, hey, let's go out in the woods with like an iPhone and like somebody will figure it out. And we wound up going a slightly bigger route with it. But yeah, so it was kind of the first time I think ever that we really wrote a script for an actor that we had a relationship with.
It seems like a little bit of a cliche to say, the setting was almost a character in the film. But in this case, I mean, you're out in the middle of nowhere, very isolated. What was that experience like for everyone involved, for the people on the production side, and also to film that as actors?
Well, it's stunning there. I mean, like, it's incredible, and the scope of that wilderness, and the, it is a little corny to be like, it was a character, because it is not. It doesn't do anything. Like, it's firmly a setting, I don't mean that to you. I mean, I'm agreeing with you saying that. But it certainly, that changes if you tell this story in the Southwest. That's very different than the Pacific Northwest. And there is something like this kind of like natural fog that rolls in through the forest, and this like the constant rain, but also how lush it is and verdant. And I mean, I fell in love with the Northwest getting to be up there. I'd never been there. And I think it lends itself in that very like, it feels like you really could go like, walk into those woods and never be seen again. In a way that in the Northeast, things feel more compact, and you're like, I'm gonna hear a highway at some point,
Dunkin Donuts over there.
Yeah, there's a donkey.
Is that the secret of the film? There was always a Dunkin Donuts right outside of frame.
Yes, absolutely.
Within 30 yards, contractually.
As far as the woods themselves, like it's sort of something that we really liked playing with was that this vast wilderness kind of gives the illusion of so much like freedom of movement, right? It's like the opposite of a limited location movie or contained movie, of which we have made several. But in a weird way, this is also a limited location movie, because if you don't know how to, survive out in the woods, which our Ruth character doesn't, you're sort of stuck. You can't. What are you going to do? Like wander for 3 days and then die of dehydration? Like it actually presents a very, very scary dynamic if you're out there. And in many ways, it is just as contained as a basement of a house.
So, without giving any major spoilers away, there's some very interesting tonal shifts in the film. Some of the comedic elements that come in the middle of what's at that point a horror film. I guess, what was the inspiration for that? And then for the people performing it, was that a difficult thing to adapt to as you went through the arc of these characters' journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think, from our perspective, that was something that we wanted to experiment with. I think we always like to mix our genres a bit. I think our last film, Villains, is like, a blend of a few different genres, but they're all kind of happening on top of one another the whole time. You kind of understand the type of movie you're watching 5 minutes in. This was a little bit more of us wanting to play with these abrupt shifts in tone where all of a sudden you're in a different kind of movie that you didn't expect. And so while there's like plot twists and turns, there's also kind of tone twists and turns in this. And I think it's something that we had just a ton of fun with, something that felt like, that felt original to us that we just hadn't seen. We just wanted to experiment with those things. We were really happy with it. I think, there's a really rich history of horrors and thrillers that have like little funny things that, like Freddy Krueger's funny, that's something that you see a lot. And so I think, Freddy Krueger's funny.
From a certain point of view.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, and how was that performing as you kind of went through the journey with these characters?
I mean, that's honestly what really drew me to this script. I think there's a real challenge in it and something that I hadn't really done before. And, I knew from working with Dan and Bobby before that they could pull it off. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was so fun because there's so many layers to it, and certain scenes, like I know internally what's going on, but we don't want the audience to know what's going on, and so it's just it was really kind of fun to play with all that.
Very cool. Yeah. All right, thank you so much. Significant Other debuts on Paramount Plus October 7th. So check that out there. Check out more content from New York Comic Con at cbr.com. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.